We are getting our first look at dozens of bills filed for consideration in this year's legislative session. What's being considered? Plus, the House Speaker and a group of Republican lawmakers visit the southern border following record crossings last month, where negotiations stand on Capitol Hill.
And a few flurries are possible by tomorrow morning, but a widespread soaking is on tap by this weekend. Those details on the way as Mountain News First at 4 continues.
Mountain News First at 4 continues.
With the cooler temperatures and possible winter weather, many people are cranking up the heat and pulling out those winter coats. But not everyone is afforded the same comforts. WYMT's Buddy Forbes has more about one organization's efforts to provide for people in need.
For many people across the region, areas like this are the closest thing to shelter. But as temperatures continue to drop, one Floyd County shelter is hoping to pick up neighbors in need to help them find home and a little hope. The Mattawar House of Hope just announced some open beds for the winter after helping to connect 6 people with housing at the start of the new year. Workers at the Floyd County Homeless Shelter say providing a safe space for those who just need a little stability can make all the difference with winter weather raging. And they feel blessed to have a hand in the hope.
We get people in and they're allowed to stay for several months if they need to. But what we try to do is get them unhomeless. And so sometimes we keep people for a few weeks and they find something or work something out. Sometimes it takes months and months and months. Shelter representatives say it is heartbreaking to see the need in their community. So they just want to do what they can to make sure everyone has a safe, warm place to lay their head. In Floyd County, Buddy Forbes, WYMT Mountain News.
Buddy, thank you. Those free beds mean more space for people in need. Attorney Mickey McGuire says anyone who is seeking a safe place can call the shelter at 606-949-2018 to begin the process.
Well, we are tracking some gloomy and cool conditions to continue on this Wednesday afternoon. Let's take a live look across the mountains. And you can see we are looking at some overcast skies, also some chilly temperatures at this hour. Most of us in the upper 30s and lower 40s, up to 42 for Harlan, 37 for Pikeville, and 39 for Somerset, also London. So we are cool as we go into this evening. Now, up on the radar, we are dry for most of us, maybe a small chance of a passing sprinkle or snow flurry, especially close to the Kentucky, Virginia, and Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia borders. There we go. But I do think most of that precipitation is evaporating before it hits the ground. But notice as we zoom out, we are tracking 2 different cold fronts, one close to Cincinnati and one close to Chicago. That will continue pushing off to the south as we go into late tonight, also early on Thursday. So we are tracking some more snow flurry chances. Not going to be widespread, but possibly a few snow flurries to start your Thursday. Cooler on Thursday, highs back in the upper 30s, a break on Friday, and then 2 stronger weather systems. One this weekend, also one as we go into early next week. The first system, watching out for possibly some wintry weather in some areas. The second system, no wintry weather, but possibly some gusty winds up to 30 or 40 miles per hour. So we stay busy as we go into early next week as well. All those details coming up in just a few minutes. Steve?
Cameron, thank you. We are getting our first look at dozens of bills filed for consideration in this year's legislative session in Frankfort. While the budget will dominate talks throughout the 60 days, there will be debate on everything from education restrictions to legalization of things long considered illegal in the state. WYMT's Phil Pendleton has more on some of the items to be considered.
We got our first look at some of these bills yesterday and through today, all because of a relatively new law that was passed preventing bills to be pre-filed before the session would start. And now we are seeing bills that deal with everything from property tax exemptions to new rules for schools dealing with how they treat students, and even some constitutional amendments that ultimately you, the voter, would decide upon.
Senate Bill 10 would be put to voters if passed. It would move the year of the governor's race to the same year as the presidential race, but not start until 2032. The 2027 winners of the constitutional officers, including governor, would then serve a 5-year term.
Our office is neutral on it, but there are pros and cons. I'd say the biggest pro of having the elections for governor, secretary of state, attorney general, and so forth moved out of the odd year into a presidential year is, number one, it would mean a cost savings for the county clerks and for us.
Adams says on the downside, it would create a much longer ballot and possibly longer lines at the voting places. Senate Bill 10 is sponsored by Republican Christian McDaniel. On the Democratic side in the House, Representative Nima Kulkarni is sponsoring a bill to decriminalize recreational use of cannabis.
But it's pretty common sense stuff. We don't want to penalize individuals for something that occurred many years ago that now is going to be legal in our Commonwealth.
And some other bills that have been filed, and some of these have had trouble in the past, raising the minimum wage. This year, it would raise it to $15 an hour if passed by the General Assembly, and another one dealing with automatic speed detectors in work zones. In Frankfort, Phil Pendleton, WKYT.
Phil, thank you. House members have until February 28th to file bills, and in the Senate, it is the 28th of that month. A woman arrested in connection with a New Year's Day shooting in downtown Lexington makes her first court appearance. A not guilty plea was entered for Montaja Long. Long is the woman seen in a video that was obtained exclusively by our sister station WKYT. It shows her firing 7 shots towards someone who's running away. There's the video there. Now, this all stemmed from a fight that happened near the Marriott City Center. The shooting is putting local business owners on edge.
We have all these things downtown, and we've got somebody that doesn't have human regard shooting at people, and you start to question why.
Long is charged with wanton endangerment and discharging a firearm in city limits. Her next court hearing is January 12th. A man is in custody after an overnight standoff with police in a central Kentucky neighborhood. It began around 9:30 Tuesday night in Harrodsburg. Officers responded to a possible disturbance and were met with gunfire shortly after knocking on the door. They retreated, began blocking off the area and evacuating neighbors. That's when they learned that another person was in the home.
We were able to negotiate a female to exit the property, and she was taken without any injuries. That left the suspect alone in the residence.
Both state police and the FBI assisted with the matter. After hours of negotiating, officers convinced the suspect to surrender and took him into custody. He's now in the Boyle County Detention Center. Right now, House Speaker Mike Johnson and around 50 other Republican lawmakers are visiting America's southern border to highlight the U.S. migrant crisis. The group is in Eagle Pass, Texas, one of the busiest entry points in the country. Last month, authorities at the southern border encountered a record number of migrants, setting a record that dates back to 2000.
The border is an absolute catastrophe, and this is because of the policies of this White House and this administration.
The Biden administration is accusing the group of hamstringing border security in the name of extreme partisan demands. CBS News has learned the White House is open to major policy changes on asylum law in exchange for aid for Ukraine. Coming up on First at 4, police agencies across the nation are getting more tech savvy, how they are using drones not to patrol but to respond to emergencies.
Plus, the forecast remains busy for the weekend, but also into next week. Timing out those rain chances after this break.